All right, everyone. Hello, my name is Kirsten. Today I'm going to be presenting on my paper topic, which was the potential effects of climate change on marine mammals. Now, my particular focus on this paper is rising sea temperatures. So those rising temperatures of the ocean. Now, what are the risks to these rising temperatures? Meaning, what are the main factors that are going to play an effect on these marine mammals due to these rise in temperatures? And there's four main ones that I focus on in this research paper. The first one was range shifts. The second one is the loss of sea ice. The third is food web shifts. And the fourth is toxic exposure. So we're going to go into more depth on each of these through this presentation. The first one we're going to talk about is range shifts. Now with range shifts, basically this warming of the sea is causing these animals to move from their locations where they're normally found. One very good example is the vaquita. The vaquita is a cetacean, so it is a part of the cetacean family, or classified as under whale and dolphin species. Now these guys are actually going to be located just south of Mexico there, and you'll notice that they have land north of them, right? So the vaquita population, if they needed to shift ranges due to rising temperature, they have nowhere to go north, right? Rise in sea temperature is going to start from the south. It's going to be very warm around the equator, and it's going to move because we all know that it's cold in the north. So this vaquita population unfortunately cannot go north, and therefore they are a species of concern when it comes to these rise in temperatures. The species has ultimately nowhere to go, and there are several species of cetacean and other marine mammals that unfortunately cannot adapt by utilizing range shifts due to these warm rising sea temperatures. Now, how is this research found? How are we figuring out that these animals are moving geographically? And that is through sightings. So we're able to see these animals out on research vessels. People are reporting these animals in unknown locations, and that's how we're able to basically figure out that these animals are moving from different locations. Also through marine mammal strandings, so whether that be individual strandings or mass strandings, when these marine mammals are beaching themselves, that is going to be recorded, and most likely that's going to be through NOAA or the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. Basically, they're going to be able to keep a long list of records of these animals and where they're going to be normally stranding, and these animals are not stranding in their normal locations. So that's how we know that marine mammals are utilizing range shifts because of these rising sea temperatures. And another big factor that plays into effect is the loss of sea ice. So this is a huge factor for those animals that utilize the ice, whether that be to avoid predators or to hunt for their food or find that prey. So right over here, we've got a couple of photos. That first photo on the top left, that is going to be a seal along with some orcas. And that seal is going to utilize that sea ice in order to propel themselves up and out of the water, basically like to beach themselves, in order to avoid those predators. So you'll notice that that seal is nice and safe from those orcas because they are not able to get up onto that ice. And if there's no ice there, well, what's going to happen to that seal population? That's right, it's going to decline. So we want to make sure that we are keeping sea ice in order to protect many different populations of animals. We also have polar bears. Polar bears are going to utilize that sea ice because they do hunt for those animals that are located in the water in those warmer locations geographically. So right here we have an emaciated polar bear, definitely not a healthy polar bear, so very malnourished, unfortunately, and that is due to the sea ice. So researchers are actually finding that these polar bears are having calves, and we have a long list of weights of what a normal range that a polar bear should be in while pregnant, as well as after giving birth to calves. And these polar bears are being found way under those normal ranges. And so we're seeing that the sea ice being removed is actually causing them to not be able to find enough food because the ice is not there for them to go out on. Now we also have gray whales, and these gray whales are going to utilize shallow waters in order to have their calves. And if there's no more shallow water due to sea ice melting, because when sea ice melts, all of our waters are going to rise, right? All of our levels are not going to be normal anymore. And so those levels are going to rise. And unfortunately, those shallow areas are going to be almost non-existent. And those gray whales are going to utilize those shallow waters in order to have their calves. So many different reasons why rising sea temperatures are so detrimental to many marine mammals, and sea ice is a big one. And then also we have food web shifts. So this basically, these predators are having to shift from what prey they're finding, as well as other animals that are prey animals. They're having to find other food sources. So right here we have cephalopods. Now the rise in different sea levels, different chemicals in the sea that were rising were actually causing cephalopods or squids to basically increase in numbers. So something was causing them to dramatically increase, and that caused also warming waters caused these animals, such as marine mammals, to hunt for more squid. So cephalopods are going to be a big factor. Cetaceans, whales, and dolphins, your pinnipeds, like your sea lions and your seals, they're not going to normally hunt for those cephalopods. That's not going to be a main part of their diet. We're actually finding that with an increase in the squid populations, those animals are seeking out cephalopods in particular for their prey. And we also have sand eels. So sand eels are going to be a big part of the harbor porpoise's diet. And sand eels, unfortunately, are seeing a big decline in their larvae because the larvae cannot survive in certain temperatures at certain stages of life. So we're seeing a decrease in the sand eels, which is ultimately causing the harbor porpoise to shift from not finding those sand eels and ultimately having to find a different prey source. So food web shifts are a big factor as well in those rising temperatures. And then lastly, we have toxic exposure, which all of us here in Florida are pretty used to. It's going to be, the main one is going to be red tide. So we all know that when it gets warm out or when it gets summer, red tide is going to be coming, and that can ultimately affect those bottlenose dolphins as well as those manatees. So right here we have a manatee, and that red tide is just not going to be good for their health. We know that it affects us and our respiratory system, and the rising temperatures are ultimately contributing to that red tide. So if it's affecting us, it's going to affect our other air breathers like those cetaceans and of course our manatee here. So basically, we need to protect these marine mammal habitats. We need to reduce those climate stressors as much as we possibly can. Here we've got some images that are very important. The greenhouse effect. So basically, sunlight comes into our earth and it is basically being trapped here due to the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse effect can be good because we do want to keep our earth warm, right? We don't want it to be icy all over. So we want to have a nice balance. But unfortunately, we are creating a lot of those greenhouse gases that are being released, and they're being released mainly CO2 is being released, and that is through our power plants, burning fossil fuels and coals and things like that. And I also threw in a picture of pollution here because that is something that we can help on a daily basis with not contributing to the marine mammals and their overall health effects. Pollution, unfortunately, is a whole nother topic, but it is something that we all want to make sure that we're not contributing to, and we're always going to be wanting to prevent pollution as much as possible. But yes, those greenhouse effects, the greenhouse gases, that is going to be a huge factor into why our sea levels are warming so much. And basically it's just getting trapped here. And then this was a pretty good diagram that I found on the web, pretty much showing those greenhouse gases. And it's going to be the #1 contributor to that climate change. And we see here that 45% of burning fuel for electricity and heat, and the #1% is going to be pretty much from us, from our usage, right? So all of this is pretty much us contributing to this climate change. But we just want to make sure that we are keeping an eye out on all of these levels and making sure that we are preventing as much as possible to these contributing factors, because they are so detrimental to many different species of marine mammals. And that is all that I have for today. So I would like to thank you all so much. I do apologize for not being able to make it to present live today. I do hope that you enjoyed this presentation and learning a little bit more about marine mammals and climate change and why it's so important that we are all keeping an eye on those rising sea temperatures, not only for marine mammals, but many other species that call our ocean home. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a great day. Please feel free to reach out or email me if you have any questions, or if you want to learn more about marine mammals or climate change in general. I'd love to have those conversations. And I will see you all later. Have a great day. Bye-bye.